Okay, I
So
see it's
preparing
streaming.
now. Yep.
Check over here, refresh that.
Give it. Still thinks it might be loading on my side. All right, I see us. All right,
You see
it
us
looks
on
live
YouTube?
on my end. Yeah, it redirected me there, and I heard us with a 30-second delay, which is confusing.
Oh, there it is. Okay. What happens if I reclaim host?
Go for it. I think that probably is fine at that point. I'll keep an eye out. You can reclaim. I'll see if it stops it for some reason.
It says live.
All right. So far, so good, but we're super delayed. But I don't think it'll. I'll let you know if it drops in a minute.
Gives Warden time to hit the censor button.
Exactly.
The bleep button. Well, then I will call to order this May 11th.
You won't need it if Tammy's muted.
Regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. All trustees are present virtually. We are still operating under Governor Cuomo's executive order, which prohibits live meetings, or I should say in-person meetings. We're allowed to have live meetings via video conferencing, and we are live streaming to our YouTube channel, and we are recording this for posterity. I see no members of the public present at the moment, but they're certainly welcome to join. Item number 2 on the agenda is, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, then in the Dropbox, we have item number 3, which is approval of our minutes from our April 13th Zoom-based village board meeting. If someone would like to make a motion to adopt those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on those minutes? I think they do reflect the recording link in case anyone does want to check that out. If there are no amendments to those minutes, then all in favor of adopting those minutes as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item number 4 on our agenda tonight is a public hearing for local law 5-2020, which is an amendment to our sewer rents law, which we had just adopted last month. Last month's sewer rent law moved us to a bi-monthly and every other month billing cycle, as well as it adjusted the sewer rates. Water rates have not been changed. This local law, proposed local law, will allow for one change only, which is that the village board may by resolution waive or suspend penalties or late fees for delinquent payments for water and sewer, or in this case sewer for this particular law, in the event or as the result of any federal, state, or local state of emergency declaration. So it's not an open-ended option for us. It's only in situations like the one we're currently in. So I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for proposed local law 5 of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of going into public hearing for local law 5 of 2020, please say aye.
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 We are now in, Ferris has a comment. We are now in our public hearing for local law 5 of 2020. And if anyone present on the call would like to make any comments. Nancy, Ann, Mark.
That's not being, I'm not really very well informed about this local law, so I'm going to refrain from comment at this time.
Yeah, basically, Mark, what we're doing is we've had some conversations about Is there a way to alleviate financial stress from folks in the forms of late fees and penalties and interest for late payments of certain things? We have very little flexibility, unfortunately, on the property tax side. So that really just leaves our water and sewer billing as a way to allow for folks who might be late in paying in this particular billing cycle, really, depending on how long the state of emergency lasts. It does not waive or forego pre-existing late fees for folks who may have been late on previous bills. And it's not an ongoing open-ended thing. It has to be decided by the board on a case-by-case, or at least a time-by-time basis if there happens to be a state of emergency for some reason.
Sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah. And
Yeah, Nancy.
while I am not a member of the public that would be affected by this, I applaud your efforts at trying to be responsive to your constituents and their needs, and think that it's a very appropriate thing to do.
Thank you for that. Ann, anything you want to chime in with?
We've also been looking at that, and there's pros and cons to everything. And I think it's something that you could also just look at in a couple of months and say, oh, well, okay, maybe we want to have maybe some incentive for people to keep up on things. But I think in the short term, I think it's very good public will, as Nancy said.
Great, thank you. As there are no other members of the public on the Zoom meeting at this time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on local law 5 of 2020.
I move that
So
we
moved.
close the hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second in there. Hope Tammy got that. Okay. All in favor of exiting our public hearing for proposed local law 5 of 2020, please say aye.
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 Any board discussion on this?
I do believe that we should probably have a discussion when we're going, if we're going to enable this clause, when we enable it, and put dates around when we plan on either redressing it or disabling it. We don't want it to be out there at will.
Yes, agreed. We actually have that under the mayor's report as the first item, is whether we will enable this on for this water billing cycle for the bills that just went out. So if there's no other discussion, then I would entertain a motion to adopt proposed local law 5 of 2020.
I move that we adopt the local law 5 of 2020.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion? If not, then all in favor of adopting local law 5 of 2020, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it passes. Item number 5 on the agenda is privilege of the floor. There are no members of the public other than representatives of other governments who have their own time slot. So we will move along to that next item, which is item number 6. For those on the call who are not aware, Mark Divakaitis is a member of the Ulysses Town Board, and I believe Nancy is going to be letting us know that he is taking over the responsibilities as liaison to our board. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
And with that, Nancy, I'll hand it off to you first.
Well, thank you. Yes, I did want to introduce Mark and say that we on the town board appointed him at the end of March, and we are thrilled to have him. And as you may already know, he is a village resident, and we're glad for that perspective and link, since obviously there are things that the town does that involve the whole town, including the village. And I'll actually, if I could, I'll do a couple announcements from the town, but then beg your indulgence for a minute to ask Mark to introduce himself. But the goal is that at our last meeting, once we're at full steam with me in the supervisor seat and Mark in the seat that I formerly occupied, we took a look at our various liaison assignments that we had established at the very beginning of the year and did some reshuffling. And I was very pleased that Mark was willing to step up to be the liaison to the village board. Our other town board member, who's new this year, Caitlin Olson, has been involved with some of the town village coordination around some of the pandemic response. She will be the alternate for Mark when he's not available, and I'll backstop them both if need be. But a couple of quick announcements from us is the town, as you know, our calendar year starts in January, and for the last 2 meetings, we've been looking at our town budget in light of the fiscal impact of the pandemic, the potential loss in revenue, and exploring ways that we can offset that loss in revenue with reductions in spending. And we are continuing that process with sort of another layer of detail tomorrow night at our town board meeting. But at this point, based on our even more severe projections last month and so a little bit of fine tuning this month, it appears that we can deal with over $300,000 of loss in revenue with program and equipment cuts, such that we may not need to do any staff layoffs and may not need to reduce any of the contracts. That remains to be seen, but those were a couple of starting assumptions that I was trying to make when we were trying to do this budget balancing. The town board will get another finer grained look at it tomorrow night, but that's sort of big news for us, and we'll continue on that. An area where we have collaborated is that our code enforcement officer, Tom Myers, has also been your code enforcement officer and now is full-time with you, or will be as of May 15th. And we have been grateful to you and to Tom, for his extending his service with us, eating into his service with you, to be able to help us continue our code enforcement responsibilities while we have been looking for a replacement. We had advertised, done a search, decided that we really wanted to reopen the search, we extended him a little bit longer, but we now have a new crop of candidates, and we actually have a transition plan so that he can get on with what I know is going to be a very full and busy time at the village. We will be collaborating with the town of Ithaca, who has some unused capacity at the moment in their code enforcement department, and they will send someone for between 10 and 15 hours a week is sort of what we're anticipating. And we will sort of separately, without asking to take more of Tom's time away from the village, we'll contract with him for a few hours to do that handover to the town of Ithaca. But then we're hoping as soon as we can to actually get a new part-time code officer back on track and picking up the good work that Tom had been doing for us. So that's in the works. And the other thing that is probably of interest to the village, and the fact that this is a public meeting, it won't make it any less of a surprise, is that we have on our agenda for our town board meeting tomorrow night a little resolution to recognize Fire Chief Jason Fulton for his years of service, both to the village and because you protect us, to town residents as well. So we will miss Jason in his role as fire chief. He's been very active and proactive, and it's clear that he has energy and passion for the role. And we're looking forward to getting to know Matt Taylor in the future. So that'll be coming up. And if in fact there's ever a time when we can gather in person to have a celebration, we'll certainly be there and be happy to celebrate him more directly. I think those are the things that the town is doing that may be of relevance to you. We have posted a sign on the Habitat Preserve Trail off Salo Drive, reminding people of the health department's guidelines for avoiding one another and wearing masks if you can't stay 6 feet apart, as people are enjoying that resource. So we're doing our part there. And and if you don't like where I put the banner, you're free to move it. The banner that's hanging off your front porch that says 211, encouraging people to call 211 to find out where to get help on anything from food to masks to testing and economic support. So thanks for lending your porch. It's a little more visible than our town hall would be. Questions on that? Otherwise, I'll just turn over to Mark. Maybe you can just introduce yourself a little bit and we'll move on from there.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Devokaitis. Nancy already told you that I was appointed to the Ulysses Town Board to fill out her term. And it was a really exciting opportunity. Kind of was a little bit out of the blue. I can't say I've been longing to get into local politics, but when presented with the opportunity, I was pretty excited to jump in and learn what's going on with the many layered system that run all of our lives. So it's been great to just kind of get to know what happens at the town level. Excited to take this seat, obviously, as a village not take this seat, but take this opportunity to be a liaison as a village resident, to learn more about what happens with the village board. I've been to a couple of state of the village meetings, but that's about it in terms of my direct involvement. So, here, active member of the community. You might know me if you ever come to trivia at Atlas. I've hosted trivia there for a while. Local musician. I work up at Cornell for the Lab of Ornithology. So I've got a lot of interest in environmental issues, agricultural issues, issues of how communities can be resilient. So learning and happy to answer any questions or be hit up for any help that you might need on a project, because we've just all got to do what we can.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Nancy and Mark. Any questions for Nancy or Mark?
Except to say welcome, Mark. Thanks for taking on the job.
Thanks, yeah, excited.
Keep that excitement. You're going to need it.
It's an interesting time to jump in.
Yeah, no kidding.
And Mark also helps us lower our average age of membership. And that was frankly, cultivating the next generation of leaders, as I feel like what those of us who've been involved have a responsibility to do. And I'm grateful that Mark stepped up, and I think he's going to be terrific. He's already being great, but he'll be even better.
Thanks, Nancy.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping in, Mark. It's I had made a comment to Nancy before your appointment that it's been officially, I guess it would be this fall, would be 10 years since we've had a village resident on the town board. So I think that's a welcome addition to include the village in town operations.
Yeah, I'm still learning how they all overlap and how this whole thing is set up. So, but I'm doing a lot of reading. It's been fun. It hasn't been boring. Mostly hasn't been boring.
Never a dull moment, as we've learned in the last however many days. Good. Well, if there are no additional questions for Nancy or Mark, Ann, you're up to bat.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody. I feel like I'm at the Village Hall, or at least in front of the Village Hall. Let's see. Start with the smaller stuff first. Our housing committee is working on getting some rental assistance for folks who in need. You might have heard that the city was able to do a program, I think, for 50 people or up to 50 people for rental assistance. And so I'm on the housing committee, and so we're looking to see if we can divert some money in some of our programs to do that. And next month is LGBTQ Pride Month, so I'm hoping you guys can hoist the pride flag on your porch again. And I know Tammy always tells me whether I have the flag or not. Do I have the flag, Tammy, or do you?
I believe we have the flag, ladies. Yeah.
Okay, if
Yeah, I
not, let
think-
me know and okay, some municipalities I keep it. Maybe it's Enfield that I have. Okay, thank you. And let's see. The budget and reopening are the next two things, which are pretty big. So for our county budget, you might have heard we're looking at a shortfall right now of between 11 and 18 million. And lots of different factors in there. We're going to meet again. The county legislators are going to meet again at the end of June to review what information we have by that time. And a lot of it is up in the air, depends on what the state does and the federal government and on and on. And you also probably heard this, we made 96 temporary furloughs of employees, which is a really tough thing to do. But we thought at least to do that now to save up as much money as we could to lessen the impact later in this year and next year because of people being able to get enhanced unemployment insurance right now. And as far as reopening, we're, I don't know if anybody was able to get on the call. There's a call, or not a call, a video presentation on YouTube with county officials or our emergency response committee at 5 o'clock. Did anybody see that?
I believe Carissa Parlato was joining that call for us.
Yeah, not this week. I was on it last week.
Okay, so that was at 5 o'clock today. I'll send a link to that. It's gonna, as you probably know, we're again some of this, so I apologize for repeating some of the stuff you guys probably know. But we're part of the southern tier, Tompkins County is. And so our region has met the criteria for beginning to reopen. And so that's mainly going to focus on construction and manufacturing. And we don't have all of the guidelines yet for New York State to do that. One thing I just wanted to point out is if anybody saw Governor Cuomo today, somebody asked him a question at the end about who's going to approve all of the business plans as they want to reopen. And he said the regional departments and the regional committees. That is totally not accurate, to put it bluntly. So we don't, that committee of the coalition for all the counties in the southern tier, that group will not have that capacity. Either will local health departments or code officials. So people are going to have to, or companies are going to have to follow the guidelines and attest to that they prepared a plan that was in accordance with the guidelines that will be coming from New York State, hopefully very quickly, because some businesses and will be eligible to be open Friday or Saturday or Sunday or Monday. I'm not really sure exactly. So we're gonna pass out that information as soon as we get it, or you can look on the New York State website. We are looking at reconstituting our county workforce as much as we can right now. And so the plan is called the Reconstitution of Our Operations Plan. So it's called ROOP. And so the county developed a plan to do that. And it looks at the employees, the work area, various activities for each department, including, of course, interaction with the public. And if you don't, I'll send that too, just so you'll have it all in one link if you haven't seen that yet, because the county wanted to provide it as soon as we developed it in case other municipalities wanted to use this or something similar. But it helps you to go through step by step to evaluate, to set up a plan. I think that's the gist of everything. So that's all I had.
Any questions for Ann?
And will you send that link to us as well?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Item number 7 on our agenda is our board member reports, starting with fire, CPZR, and farmers market.
Sure. So as Nancy alluded to, Jason Fulton finished his 16 years of service as the fire chief for the fire department. I was fortunate enough to join mayor at a swearing in ceremony for the new panel of officers, and look forward to working with Matt Taylor closely as he takes on the title of chief for the fire department. Hopefully, again, we will have some sort of ceremony when we're allowed to kind of all congregate yet again to formally thank Jason Fulton for his service. But it's been, yeah, he's done an incredible job over the 16 years and leaves the department in a really good spot for a new generation of fire chief. So we're looking forward to the future and thankful for the past on that. On the farmer market side of things, the farmers market opened for the first market of the season last Wednesday. I know Ann was able to attend. I was as well, both to shop and to take a look around, see how the protocols are working out for them. It was a very calm and reassuring atmosphere outside, fresh air, stalls primarily separated, with a stall in between. There was a couple more folks than could actually be fully spread out, but everyone had masks and was keeping their distance and being quite respectful. So a very good atmosphere. I would highly recommend people to take a look. It isn't the social atmosphere that it was last year that I think we all enjoyed as we visited the market, but it's, I think, more important than ever to support our local farmers and local food sourcing. And they're doing just a great job of really keeping it focused on groceries, meat, vegetables, that kind of thing. So highly recommend visiting that. The market board is going to be meeting regularly and reviewing their protocols, reviewing how the market's going, seeing if there's anything needs to be adjusted, though I didn't see anything particularly stand out. The food vendors are on pause until the beginning of June, when the market board will kind of reassess how that looks. And they've been in touch with the health department, the county health department, on what that might look like, and also keeping an eye on how Ithaca Farmers Market is approaching that. So possibly with any luck, there'll be some food for takeaway at the market as well, starting in June. I think that's all I have for the market. And then on the CPZR side, we have been kind of continuing to play catch up, as it were, or work in reaction to the current situation. Clearly, a public interest meeting isn't going to work in person right now. We did entertain the idea of doing it virtually over Zoom, and the committee, and I think rightfully so, felt that that really didn't hit the spirit of a public information meeting, would potentially add barriers for some people to participate and so forth. So we've turned our timeline around quite a bit. Our focus now is on a community survey for the village, much inspired by the one that was done a little over 10 years ago for the previous comprehensive plan. We are well on our way with a draft. We actually have a kind of test version of the survey up, which I've forwarded onto the board. So if you want to take a look at that, shouldn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes, I'd imagine. Feel free to fill it out. We're going to throw away the initial test answers, so feel free to answer any way you want, or try and break the survey in any way if you want to. We're really looking to try and understand how people react to the content, the questions, the layout, the structure, and then we're on the back end looking at the reports that come out and making sure we're kind of getting the information in a form that's usable to us and actionable. So that's hopefully going to go up sometime next week. The intent is to leave that up for a month. And as those results come in and as that closes out, we'll continue to use that feedback to roll into an early draft of the comprehensive plan that we're again aiming for around a month after closing that survey. So kind of end of June, beginning of July. We'll let that hang out on the website. We'll make a big publicity kind of push about it for people to take and read on their own, collect their own comments, potentially give us feedback directly. But the intent is to roll that all into a public meeting, hopefully towards the end of the summer, beginning of fall, if there's a window of opportunity in there where we could have a public meeting to get people's feedback from that draft that will be out and circulating for some time that people can have to kind of sit with it and think about it. We'll also use some of the feedback from that survey to inform some high-level zoning revision guidance. So there is an early draft kind of for us to start a conversation around from EDR that we're looking at as a committee. It does not go into fine detail, but more kind of highlights areas of the zoning ordinance that either Tom or the committee has brought up or we've heard in feedback, and we'll continue to hear from the survey areas of concern that are highlighted that we would then dig into more details around. So no details yet, but nothing surprising. Things like we should revisit potentially having 2 residential zones, right? This is not surprising by any means, but just kind of highlighting these key pieces so we can have a conversation about them. That is the key parts of CPZR. So a lot happening. I think we're kind of starting to see the downward slope on this thing, and a lot of pieces are starting to come together over the next couple of months through the fall, and we'll see how it all lands and how that interacts with our ability to meet.
Great. Any questions for Ben? Okay, Ben Carver, EMS, Recreation and Street Tree Advisory.
I have fairly little to report this month. EMS, as I said last month, has doing away with the separate quarantine ambulance. Things are carrying on essentially as usual, with the addition, obviously, of safety protocols and additional training and that kind of thing. But generally, operations look fairly normal. I think call numbers are a little bit down, which I think speaks well about our community's commitment to social distance. People who maybe would have called before, but it wasn't quite essential or didn't feel necessary are holding off now. So that's an interesting data point maybe to think about later when we have more time to think about these things. As far as youth goes, Nancy could probably say much more about this, but at this point, summer rec planning is continuing. It sounds like there's about 1 million contingency plans and, just basically waiting to see what the guidance is from higher levels to see what we can do. At this point, I've been really impressed with what they've put together and what, the number of contingency plans. And, I think there's no reason not to be optimistic from my point of view at this point. It looks like probably unlikely that we'll be able to use the school, but I'm confident there will be an alternate put in place, and we'll see how the timeline works out and how many kids can go and all of that. But certainly for the moment, if you are a parent thinking about doing it, I I think it's, keep your eye on it and remain optimistic. We did have a 4 boards meeting earlier today, which Nancy and Rorden were both on, with the school and the town and T-Bird Community Rec and Rorden and I from the village. And it sounds like they're largely in a holding pattern, although they have, I think at this point, they're starting to pivot away from fundraising goals, or they have already pivoted rather. And they are looking for other avenues to sort of increase recreation and awareness of recreation options. So if anyone has anything along those lines to forward to them, I'm sure they would like to know about any activities or options going on. So if you know of anything, feel free to share. The tree committee is also largely in a holding pattern. We had hoped to do some planting this spring. I mentioned before, I think that Tony Elmore and the Southern Tier Landscapers Association had sort of arranged for us to get 4 trees to plant in the village. Unfortunately, even though our DPW could do it, planting was one of the things explicitly prohibited under the governor's orders. So we weren't able to find someone with the skills and expertise that could assist the DPW to make that happen. So we're hoping to put that off and try again in the fall. We've basically missed the window for appropriate and effective planting for the spring. So we're hoping to try again in the fall. We did put together the tree tour that I mentioned, I believe, briefly in the last meeting. So if anyone is interested or anyone would like to take their children out on a brief tour of the village and the trees, there's a Facebook event that includes directions. There's directions on the village website, both of which include a sort of brief map of tree locations, and all of the trees are outmarked in the village and have the species and all of that. And if you'd like to, you can submit all of the tree names to me and be entered to win a couple of different tree related prizes, including, I hope, one of the trees from Tony and the Southern Tier Landscapers Association. So that should be fun, and that's about all I've got.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions for Ben? If not, then Deb, who looks like her background makes it look like she is
Outside.
out in the weeds.
I'm deep in the
DPW
weeds.
Water and Sewer.
Deep in the weeds. Okay, the sewer report is in the Dropbox if you wanted to take a look at it. I'm not going to have you open it up, but I will tell you there are a couple notable things on there. We actually got 3 full inches of rain in under an hour in early April, which again put us over our limits with the DEC. We actually processed 1.95 million gallons of water, as opposed to the 250,000 gallons that we are permitted for in that time frame. So I continues to be our weak point and where we have to be spending our time and money. Gordon's been in contact with MRB quite a bit and pushing forward the agenda to get our things scoped and televised so that we can continue to take more actions to have an appropriate amount move through our systems. In addition, there is a heater issue in the I&I room. We had someone come in to take a look at it, had a quote for it, but we haven't gotten the quote back yet. And I'm sure that it's all around everybody learning how to work remotely and just the situation. So we continue to push forward with that. As Rorden will probably mention later, the DPW is working under their COVID-19 protection resolution and how they can all work together without harming each other or impacting each other. I'm going to leave that to you to discuss, Rorden, if you want to. I know that Dusty presented that to you.
Sure.
And I think that's about all I have. So they are on split, they are not working at full staff all the time. That's the one thing that you should be aware of. They're at like a 1.5 person per day, and they're alternating. John Lanning is always at the water plant so that he doesn't get impacted by anybody else. So he's always down at the park when he is on. And that was by request to the Department of Health. So that there was always going to be that water operator who was not being impacted if anything happened in the village. The other thing I want to just take note and make everybody aware of, we've had some absolutely fabulous feedback on John Lanning. He's done some great work with the water district and with the reporting that they've required, and he's gotten a number of compliments from different levels in the area. So kudos to John for everything that he's done for us. And that's about it.
Any questions for Deb?
Roden?
Yeah.
It's not really a question for Deb, but I realize under Public Works, something I actually neglected to say at the beginning is that our town's Cemetery Road Bridge project is sort of at a phase where we're needing to develop some agreements around right-of-way. And since a portion of the bridge will need to be sort of opened and some of the supports will actually be on village land, or we need to have access to village land to do some of the excavation and laying of bridge supports. Rod and I have a bit of an agreement and a map that outlines sort of the village portion, and that it will be seeking agreement from you on that. So I'll make sure you get to see that. But then all these projects, I mean, all these steps still mean we really won't be getting it to it actually to do the work until the next construction season. So I believe that's, I think, our timing. So, and you may see maybe as soon as next week, people may begin to see trucks in and around the town hall. It is our intention, especially with the partial reopening, that our HVAC, which is a building-wide heat pump and air circulation system being funded by NYSERDA, will finally now be able to get underway. We had wanted them to get started sooner, but had been told that energy efficiency was not an essential service, so it needed to wait. But we are presuming that it is moving forward. They've already provided us with some assurances on how they would work, and we'll be trying to stagger our staffing so that they can be in the building when they need to, and all of that. So you may see some activity, but that's what it's about. So sorry to piggyback on you, Deb.
That's okay. I'm coming back. So hang on a second, Warden. Nancy, that reminded me, Indian Fort Road and those houses that are supposed to be in districts for the town. I know that you were addressing it at some point. Do you know if that's still in the works?
We're, I think, close to getting a restated version of the original contract that we signed with Alpha House, now signed with CARS. We had a very productive meeting about a month ago, and we keep waiting for their lawyer to sort of get back to us to finalize that so that we can move on. But we have had a conversation with them that would sort of change the way we bill them to bring in some more money so that we can have a repair fund, so that if there are breaks or more breaks, we'd be in a position to be able to work with you on that.
Okay, I think that I'm specifically speaking to not the CARS property, But the properties from Waterberg over to Indian Fort that gets to the Cars property, that's all, we had a memo of understanding that was supposed to turn into a permanent understanding years ago. And I thought that was being incorporated into that discussion. Maybe it's something, we can take this offline.
Yeah, that'd be good. And
Okay.
if there's some documentation, I know I'm still getting up to speed on some of it, so that would be great to.
Yeah,
help you.
I'll send that to you.
Yep.
And having mentioned Indian Fort Road, the one thing I didn't talk about was the water main breaks. We've had 2 in the last 4 months, but that's all we've had in the entire winter, which is an amazingly low number. They just are coming much later in the season. And the last one actually was on Indian Fort Road. In addition, there was, thank you for posting that, Gordon, because it reminded me that I was supposed to be speaking to, Moody has reworked the Frontenac well, and they had pulled out the pump, and when they did, they found out that the head was in truly poor shape, in such bad shape that rebuilding it makes little to no sense. We received a quote for a total of $7,500. It's like 71 something, but there's shipping charges that aren't included in that. $7,100. And we are going to, I'm proposing that we take up to $7,500 from our reserves to pay for the new wellhead for the Frontenac well, Yes. Okay. So I don't have enough formal resolution, and I don't know that I actually even need it for that much money, but what do you think?
So in the Dropbox, it was just added. The title is Trumansburg Well 1 Pump Repairs. There's a PDF of the quote from Moody's. It's about a 4 to 6 week lag time. So the wellhead is already not in good shape. If you're not familiar with where the well is, it's down at the Boy Scout camp at the bottom of Frontenac Road. That's our original 1967 well. Not the original pump, obviously, but that's the original well site. So it would be a little bit longer in time, and the cost would be close to the same to rebuild the existing one with no guarantee that it would work much better. So I think a simple resolution. Which line do you want to take this out of, Deb?
It's got to come out of equipment reserves. We don't have that much in budgets.
We have a reserve for water equipment, and we have one for repairs. The repairs one has a little over $369,000 in it.
Go ahead and take it out of the repairs then.
Okay.
Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome.
So then we would need to take it from that line. We would need a resolution subject to permissive referendum to take up to, what was that total, Deb?
I said up to 7,500. I think it adds to 7,100, but with taxes and everything else.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to authorize subject to permissive referendum an amount of up to $7,500 for the purchase of a new well pump, high pressure discharge head, and ancillary parts for the Frontenac well.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Feels good to spend in these times.
I don't think so. What makes me feel good is that I think we're running out of parts to replace because this is the old well. And now we've done all the cleaning, and this is a new head for that well. It's advantageous to get it out of the way. Okay.
So there's no additional comment then. All in favor of approving this resolution subject to permissive referendum, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any questions for Deb?
I did have one more about the well, or sorry, about the
Okay.
wastewater treatment plant.
Uh-huh.
I know that we often go over our permitted amount for the plant, but we're built to handle much more. But that amount that you mentioned of actual was very high. Did we go
It
over
was
what
much-
we're kind of
yes.
built for?
Yes.
How did
we
that work out? Do you
This
know?
is the first time ever. And it was, yes, we're built for, I think a million 250, and we were at 1,995,000. So how did what work out? This was an unusual rain event that had 3 inches in an hour, 3 inches of rain in an hour. And that's where it comes from.
Yeah,
I was
well, I
gonna-
noticed on the report, it didn't seem like we went over on any, other like actual issues, over, they have the numbers of like, what you're not allowed to let out.
Oh, right. No, it continues, it continues to process what water it processes and takes all the chemicals out of it. The problem with it is that it does overflow. And so you're not there, what's not going through the plant is the problem. And that at 1,995,000, you're overflowing. And it just happened that they were right on top of it and being able to manage it. And in fact, I think it was in the middle of it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and Dusty and the contractors were there most of the night to make sure that everything stayed under control.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment about that. 3-4 years ago, at almost, we'll call it 2 million. So the plant is built for 1.2 million, I think. And
Mhm.
3 or 4 years ago, 2 million gallon day equivalent, there would have been sewage everywhere. So the upshot of it is that with staff on site quickly enough, the plant actually handled the 2 million gallon flow. So that's a testament to the engineering and the staff. This doesn't help us going forward if we can't figure out how to mitigate that somehow. But it's certainly better than the alternative. If you remember a certain headline in the newspaper from a few years ago. It also does speak, when the time comes, it does speak to our ability to be permitted for a higher capacity, because we can easily handle much more than the meager 250,000 gallons a day that we're permitted for. So yeah, kudos to Dusty and the contracting crew for making sure it wasn't a worse situation.
Yep.
Next up, police and Trumansburg Chamber. Keith.
Beginning with police, April saw 331 calls for service. It's about 130 more than we had in April of 2019. However, 272 of those 331 were property checks, and that's kind of been the bulk of the calls during our period of shutdown, doing a lot more property checks and less vehicle and traffic stops, and no reports of social or physical distancing violations. I know there were some posts made on social media about some gatherings witnessed and how we should respond to that, but haven't had to break up any parties. Sounds like the farmers market went well, so glad we didn't have to crash that one. However, we have about a week ago, Chief Nelson had me post something on Facebook about a night of car break-ins in Tompkins County that, though we did not see them in the village, he wanted to put out a warning. Well, a couple days ago, we had 1 break-in in the village, and now we're up to 5 in the village. Cars in people's driveways are getting rummaged through. So we'll continue to put the word out to make sure you lock your cars, even if they're in your own driveway, and don't leave valuable items in those cars, even if they are locked. We also had a stolen car off of Main Street. Somebody left their keys in the car, and somebody hopped in and took it for a ride and whereabouts of that car remain unknown. So not only do not leave your car unlocked, don't leave it unlocked with the keys in the ignition. Makes it a little easy. Let's try to make it a little tougher. So yeah, I mean, Chief hasn't really elaborated too much, during crazy times, people can get a little desperate. We're happy that while nationally, I think there's been an uptick in domestic abuse and other incidences like that. We haven't seen that in the village. So we are proud of our residents in that regard, that, going into this, Chief had expressed, we don't know what's going to happen when people who aren't used to being home all day together are home all day. And we're 8 weeks in now. And so everyone's seems like they're holding it together. So thank you for that. We had a great piece of feedback come into our Facebook page, a message sent in by a resident who typed it minutes after being part of an incident up by the fire station. And we had an officer respond to something there and was eventually assisted, I think, by the state police, but he offered a ton of applause for our officer and how helpful he was and how he handled what could have been a tense situation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that piece of community feedback. And regarding Main Street, over a year ago, or probably right around a year ago, I put in that request for our Main Street to be analyzed by the Department of Transportation, help us look for ways to slow it down or mark our crosswalks better, etc. Maybe they're getting closer to that, because I got some email that was not a direct email from them, but a preferred vendor of theirs on some signs we could buy. So maybe that's how they are going to appease us, at least temporarily. But I don't imagine we're going to be buying any signs anytime soon. But there were some creative slow down signs with messaging built into them, kind of thing. So I can share that email if we think we ever want to buy signs. Regarding the chamber, we will be meeting Wednesday afternoon. We continue to move forward. There's been some developments in our investigation of the infamous fraud. So we'll be discussing that. We're hoping to get more active as the phase-in begins. We hope it progresses so we can start to do more. In the meantime, over the last 8 weeks, just been continuing to promote the businesses that remain open. I want to tip our cap to some of our local businesses that have been getting creative. Hazelnut Kitchen just had a virtual winemakers dinner, which I thought was a great attempt to kind of keep things going. I don't know if anyone heard the story of Tony Lupo, who bought a whole bunch of local gift cards to give to the CMC staff. So that was a really nice gesture to help our local community here. So Brats and Brews is doing takeout now. Little Venice continues. Rondon's continues. Hazelnut Kitchen is kind of doing it off and on. Main Street Market continues to push out meals and items. Garrett's continues to have pickup beer. And so for the first time in my life, I got takeout margaritas on Cinco de Mayo from Little Venice. I don't think I've ever done that before for good reason. But, we can do that right now. So, but I believe the phase-in, the first phase one, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it could allow shops like Sundries and Gem Shop to do some sort of curbside pickup of items. I was trying to make sense of what the governor said today. He even mentioned maybe being able to go into those places. I don't know if it depends on size, though it sounds, based on what Ann said, it sounds like everything he said the accuracy may have to be reviewed a little bit. So we could see a little bit more, hopefully. Would love to get that coffee shop going again. I'd like to have Gimme come home soon, but that's about it for now. I think people probably know that Grassroots was canceled and Porch Fest has been postponed. Porch Fest folks seem a little bit more optimistic, maybe that they might be able to reschedule later into the summer. We can only hope. And both ice cream shops are open now, so even though we continue to be somewhat isolated, if you're struggling to put on that COVID-19, I am not, but if you are, you can get over to the ice cream shops and enjoy some of our local soft serve. I think that's it.
Any questions for Keith? Treasurer
Add
Vicky.
something?
Ann.
I just wanted to add to what Keith said. So phase one is construction, manufacturing, retail is curbside. And I know that there's some stores downtown that are trying to open and they actually do like a little window at their door. So like where you can pay and a little counter there. And then also in phase one is wholesale trade, agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting.
Great, thank you. Vicky, any update from you?
I received the bank statements for April, so I will get that closed hopefully this week, at least early next week. Just trying to keep up on things, and I'll be getting ready to turn over the year, you know, with the files and stuff like that. At this point, I'm going into the office on Tuesdays and Fridays for 3 to 4 hours. And Morgan is there on Mondays and Thursdays to do water payments. So if there is something that you need, or those are the days that at least somebody is in the office for now. I did get a call. My surgery's been rescheduled for June 8th. So I will not probably be attending the meeting, but I will make sure the checks are done and make arrangements with either Tammy or Morgan to get those out. My plan is to only kind of be out of the loop for that week. And I've spoke to Warden about continuing to work from home after that, which, you know, we've already done it. So it's pretty easy right now. And fingers crossed, hopefully we'll be back the Monday after the 4th of July. That's kind of my plan. I'm hoping that's the way it goes. So, you know, if you need anything.
Want to give yourself a little more time before you start working, Vicky.
Well, I'm very wishful thinking. So, you know, I'm hoping it all just goes very smoothly at this point. So if you need anything, you know, the phone's forwarded, you know.
Okay. Any questions for Vicky? Tammy.
Hey, everybody. I just have a couple of things. I'm working on getting the annual water quality report out. So I'm doing a lot of labeling and mail piecing at this point. The one thing that I do have ready to go to the county is the re-levy from the unpaid water and sewer bills. So before this is over tonight, if I could please, and I'll tell you what we've got. On the water side of the re-levy, it's $20,879.29. And on the sewer side, it's $14,118.80 for a total of $35,042.66. I really, in my gut, thought that this was really high. And then when I went back and looked, last year's was higher. So by about 2,000. So I guess the overall number seems to be in the average. So I guess we're right where we generally are. So those are ready to go back to the county for tax billing. I worked on a reopening plan for the office and turned that over to Warden on Monday. The phone's been ringing a lot. There's still a lot of closings and a lot of tenants moving. So we're working on a lot of final bills. And I'm also working on some templates for some late notices that need to be tweaked because our billing period is going to biannual, or I'm sorry, bi-monthly as opposed to quarterly. And I think that's about it unless someone has specific questions.
Any questions for Tammy?
Yeah, I have been going in the office on Thursday afternoons and grabbing my mail and checking things. So that seems to be the best day for me to get over at this point. But if something comes up, I'm certainly more flexible than that. So just let me know.
Hope you had a great clerk's week.
Yeah.
You know what? It couldn't have been any better.
So what was that total number on the water and sewer levy?
35,042.66.
So then I would entertain a motion to authorize the re-levying of unpaid water and sewer bills onto property tax bills in the total amount of $35,042.66.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
What were the other totals, Tammy? My addition seems to be terrible, or I didn't hear you right.
Right.
What are you trying to do? Add up my math?
Yep.
I'm confused. I think maybe I wrote it down wrong.
Yes, I
Just
did the
read them
same
quickly
thing,
again.
Ben. 2879.20 was
Water.
water,
29.
29. That's what it was. I didn't get the 9.
And then what's the sewer?
14,11,880.
Yeah, that, and then 35,42.66.
Yep.
That doesn't add up.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Well, I'll have to look at my spreadsheet, but that's
The
what
pennies,
program.
don't add up. 9, 10, 18, 7, 8.
No, you're
All right,
right, they don't.
So one more time, water was 20, 879 and 29,
Yep,
correct?
that's what I.
I may have
that's what
wrote-
you-
All right, if you want to go on, I can pull up my spreadsheet and I may have written them down wrong.
All right, we will table that resolution until
I'll
the
be right
math
back.
is double checked.
1 is 9, 8, 9.
We'll move along to my report because there's a longer list than normal. A couple of items that are not on that list on the agenda. Piggybacking off something Keith said about the chamber and the village and the town have collaborated, as you all are probably aware, on a community business survey. And thank you to Caitlin Olson from the Ulysses Town Board who put the survey together. We were, I think, anticipating responses in the order of 20 to 25. And as of this morning, today was the last day for the survey to be published, we crossed 50. I think 52 or
Wow.
53 were the numbers we got back.
great.
Very, very interesting, very insightful, very good information that we will be, when I say we, I mean Caitlin will be collating. And then we will be passing that along to Tompkins County Area Development, County Administration, Tompkins Chamber, Congressman Reeves' office, and the various state senators, because they've all expressed interest in seeing kind of a snapshot of what businesses are experiencing within a community. So stay tuned for more on that. We've already talked about regional reopening. The southern tier is one of only 3 regions in the state which has been given the green light to reopen this Friday, and it is Friday the 15th. Anecdotally, I don't know that anyone will admit this on camera, but anecdotally, it sounded like going into last weekend, Thursday or Friday, Tompkins County was the only county in the state which had met all of these metrics that the governor had established to allow for reopening. And then over the weekend, it appears that and again, this is anecdotal, so if someone wants to formally contradict me, then they can feel free, but it sounds like that Tompkins County's testing numbers, which was kind of the hang up for a lot of the other counties in the area. Tompkins County's testing numbers were so high in terms of the amount of testing that Tompkins County has done that it actually dragged the region up in terms of the averages. So that's a positive sign, and kudos to Tompkins County Health Department and everyone involved in making sure we weren't one of the counties lagging behind and needing help from a neighboring county. So we know what's reopening. Governor alluded today in his press conference that perhaps the timeline could be more accelerated than every 2 weeks, but he didn't make that formal. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what that looks like. The Southern Tier Regional kind of reopening committee, I guess they're called. Our region is being headed up by, Deb, you'll appreciate this, ironically, the head of the DEC. So maybe we'll get some FaceTime with him. And of course, Jason Molino is on the committee, so we should be able to get a pretty good handle on how things are moving along. Keith mentioned that Grassroots and Porch Fest are canceled. The Memorial Day Parade has also been officially canceled. So the Legion is looking at ways to do memorial type programming for to commemorate the day and to honor the fallen. So that'll be a stay tuned as far as what that might look like, but there won't be an actual parade, unfortunately, this year. Water and sewer late fees. Yeah, Tammy.
I'm ready when you are with that number.
Okay, what was the water number?
The water number stays the same, 20,879.29. Sewer, 14,163.37. Sorry, I missed a cell.
And the total?
$35,042.66.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We have a resolution on the table to re-levy $35,042.66 of unpaid water and sewer bills to the village property tax bills coming out in June. Is there any additional discussion on that? Then hearing none, all in favor of re-levying that total amount of unpaid water and sewer bills to village property tax bills, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Tammy, you can send that in to be re-levied.
Thank you much.
Gordon, is there any chance that as we're phasing in that a parade would be acceptable? I mean, it seems, I mean, that parade's never really that congested on the sidewalks, it seems.
Yeah,
I can understand maybe not doing the cemetery gathering part, but an actual parade, I mean, that doesn't seem too bad.
so we're reading tea leaves again, and I'll certainly ask, now that we know we have a regional reopening committee, I'll ask Thursday morning in our call. My guess is that the gathering numbers will be part of phase 4. So when we look at phase 2, which is other services, professional services, phase 3 is restaurants, you know, assuming that the timeline stays at 2 weeks and we don't have a spike somewhere, that means restaurants mid-June. And then phase 4 is attractions, entertainment, and school, actually, interestingly enough. 2 weeks after that would be basically 4th of July week. So again, purely guessing, but it stands to reason that the gatherings piece, how many people you can have in one place, would be part of the phase 4. But I'll ask about that. The Legion organizes the Memorial Day Parade every year, and they wanted to be ahead of it in terms of planning. So I think that even if we were to get the green light next week, I think it would be too close for them to try to pull something off. Back to water and sewer late fees. So we adopted a local law earlier, which allows us to waive late fees. This board now can, if it chooses, exercise the ability to waive just those late fees and interest accruals that might come out of a late received bill for this this May issued bill. Bearing in mind that we are going to have billing every other month now, so the next set of water and sewer bills will be going out July 1. So if this board thinks it's a good idea, and I would certainly agree and support it, then we can choose to forego any late fees and interest charges from this particular bill, and then we'll have to see how things look in July, whether we choose to enact it for that billing cycle as well. Any thoughts?
I'm certainly in favor of that.
I'm in favor. I'd like to ask Tammy what impact that has on the software. Do you have the ability to turn it off for a quarter and
Yeah.
then turn it back on?
Actually,
Or
we choose whether we calculate and post penalties every quarter. So it's just a matter of just skipping that step.
All right, thank you. No, I'm for
Yeah,
it as
shouldn't be a
well.
problem.
Same.
So then I would entertain a motion, if someone would like to make it, that we waive late fees and interest charges on sewer bills for the preceding quarter only, which were the bills that went out at the beginning of May.
Right. So that also, that just want to clarify, that means that if they had an outstanding balance moving into the May billing, that is not covered.
Yeah, we don't compound interest. Our interest, our late fee, the 10% is only on the current billing. It doesn't compound, so that won't be a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I so move to move forward with the waiving of late fees for the May water billing only, and to be reassessed before the next billing period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Tammy Morgan, you have your marching orders for this billing cycle.
Are we collectively, and I don't mean one of you, I can certainly do it. Are we sending out something as a reminder to people? We talked about that at one point, about sending something out in May or June about, hey, your next bill's in July. I just didn't know where we were with that.
Yes, yeah, I would like you or Morgan to draft a letter, just a short letter.
Okay.
Reminding everyone that we're now on a bi-monthly billing cycle. Next water and sewer bill coming out July 1.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Just a very brief sales tax update. We received our April sales tax check last month at the end of the month, which was for the month of March sales tax period. And it was only down a couple of % from March of a year ago. One of my favorite sayings these days is better lucky than good. So actually that March sales tax payment received in April put us over our budgeted sales tax amount for the 2019-2020 budget year. So we've already made our revenue number for sales tax for the budget year we're in. So that's lucky. We will find out later this week a preliminary number on April sales tax, which I'm personally expecting to be lower than whatever the lowest estimate you've heard is. I've heard as much as down 20 to down 50. I'll bet someone a wooden nickel it'll be down 75 if anyone wants to take that bet. So we'll find out later in the week what that looks like. Now that check, which we receive at the end of this month, would be actually the last receipt for this budget year, because May sales tax, that check is received in June, which is the first month of our new fiscal year. So we can assume that we're done for the year in terms of sales tax receipts, but fortunately we hit our number. And we can assume that the first month or two or more of the new budget year will be
down.
very low on the sales tax number. But as we talked about last month and the month before, you know, we budgeted for a no change. If you kind of project forward where our sales tax was trending, had COVID not happened, we would have been up about 9% year over year. So subtract 15% off of that, it gets us back to about where we had budgeted last year. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that things can rebound a little bit in the fourth quarter. But along those lines, I have asked Vicky to calculate what it would mean in terms of revenue or cost savings, rather, expense reduction, if we had to implement a wage freeze. As you know, City of Ithaca, Tompkins County have furloughed a large number of employees. And I know that other municipalities around us are considering when or if they will need to furlough folks. I don't anticipate the need to try to figure out how to do furloughs. As uncomfortable a discussion as it always is, I'm not even sure where we would start. Certainly our biggest payroll department by far is EMS. And I don't see how we furlough first responders during a pandemic. That doesn't make any sense to me. So the alternative to trying to figure out who to furlough would be to implement, which we have the ability to do. I've confirmed with our accountant, with Dwayne, even though we've budgeted for a 3% raise for all employees outside of DPW, we have the ability to unilaterally keep wages the same as they would or as they are in the current budget year. We've done this once in the last, well, since my time on the board, and that was coming out of the recession, I think 2009, 2010 fiscal year. We did a 0% increase to wages. This would not affect DPW because they are bound by we are bound by their collective bargaining agreement. So they will be receiving a 2% raise regardless. But the savings would be around $40,000 to the village if we froze wages for everyone else. It's not a giant number, but that's close to 2 months worth of sales tax revenue. So it's something that I'm offering to the board as a consideration of whether we want to do that. We would need to decide tonight because our next meeting is in the new fiscal year.
In addition, we are also not backfilling for any
This is true.
openings, correct?
We are currently not backfilling any vacancies. That includes the 5th DPW employee. We had budgeted half a year, so we had anticipated hiring a 5th DPW employee sometime towards the end of summer, early fall. We will not, at least at this time, we will not be posting that job and looking for that 5th person, so that saves that wage which we had budgeted. We have budgeted for a full year of our 2nd full-time police officer. We don't actually have any applications or interest in that position at the moment, but I've talked to Chief about how we can make do with one full-time and filling in the other shifts as he's currently doing for a longer period of time. So those are not furloughs in the traditional sense, but in a manner of speaking, you could consider those partial furloughs by not filling those positions we had previously considered filling.
Do we have the ability, should we desire it, to reinstate those wage increases partially, partway through the year? I guess where I'm coming from is so much of this is up in the air. If we find ourselves in the fall in a better spot than we anticipated, we could have this conversation again, but it might buy us flexibility up front.
So the short answer is yes. Outside the answer that I had asked for clarification on, not only for all the other employees, but with respect to DPW, the answer is outside of the collective bargaining process. The municipal board can do anything it wants within, obviously with minimum wage laws being what they are, but the village can do anything it wants in terms of wage increases, freezes, or decreases.
My inclination would be to look first towards equipment deferrals, things like that, contributions that we could defer into reserves for equipment replacements and that kind of thing. I know if this goes long term, that becomes a real slippery slope as far as catching back up to where we need to be on all of those things. But from my point of view, $40,000 could be more easily recouped by deferring replacement costs for 2 trucks in a year than, in a way that would not affect our employees adversely. That would be my inclination. Without the budget right in front of me, it's hard to say exactly how those numbers would play out, but that's certainly where I'd be inclined to go with it.
I did actually look at that. The only thing we have scheduled at the moment, there's a replacement truck which has already been ordered. So that's, we can't unorder it, unfortunately. We will be having a conversation in the fall about the fire and EMS budget, about making a substantial change to the reserve contributions for 1 year only. The replacement cycle spreadsheet we reworked last year will actually absorb that if we want to cut the large contributions. That'll help out the village and the towns, but we can't do that for more than 1 year. That is also on the table.
Right. I mean, I was thinking more police and DPW departments that are fully within the village. Obviously, EMS and fire get sort of complicated, but it seems attainable to reach 40,000 without having to touch wages, I guess, to me. And again, I'm not looking at the numbers, so I can't say one way or the other for sure, but certainly that would be my inclination. Of course, it adds a wrinkle that we have a deadline of right now.
Keith, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I kind of agree on the number. I mean, it sounded good, and then I heard it kind of felt like only 40,000 in my head. I was a little surprised the number was that low, and I don't know the police budget off the top of my head in terms of the vehicle stuff, but I'm happy to look for alternatives. I mean, it doesn't feel like a tremendous amount of money, for us compared to not giving people their annual raises. But that said, Cornell got rid of mine. So it's something I think we're all kind of going through right now. But obviously, if we could avoid it, I think that would be better. But again, it probably requires cracking open the budget we're looking at. But
Okay, so I lost 10%. My husband lost his job. And $40,000 is not worth it, I don't think. I think we should keep the budget where it's at. I think that along with the change in the medical that we implemented this year, that I would find it difficult to say that we do a decrease as well. And it just isn't enough money to make that much of a dent in our budget. $40,000 every time I turn around, it seems like there's something, some part that's up there. So that's just my take on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not necessarily advocating for it, just wanting to give the board the opportunity to make that decision while we can. I mean, I suppose in theory, if things got bad enough, we could. It's not as easy as I made it sound to cut the wages, but we could if we had to at some point.
Mhm.
But if that's the general feeling that we'll leave that piece alone and look to tighten the belt anywhere else possible, then that's certainly okay.
Did everybody get their chance say? Did Ben,
I
did
don't know
you,
if I
Ben Darfler?
formally said, I think I'm inclined to agree that the 40,000 doesn't seem significant enough for the pain or, you know, inconvenience or whatever, you know, the other side of that coin. The only reason why I'm somewhat interested is because I feel like it kind of, even regardless of what Roden was saying, how difficult, more or less difficult it might be later to roll back the decision. The flexibility is interesting. It's always a lot easier just to postpone that for a couple of months while we see where things lie and then come back around to it. But I do agree that it seems like not enough kind of juice for that squeeze. So I'm inclined to kind of fall with the rest of where people's heads are at.
Would there be any kind of a deadline for this decision, or would we want to, or would you look to make that decision before we? I mean, I guess we're already kind of into the next budget, but I'm just wondering. I mean, the only thought I'm having right now is if we had to make a decision and based on our best guess, not offering the wage increase stems off furloughs, then that seems better. That's the only thing I would consider, but I don't know if we have that much, if we have to make that kind of a decision right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you put all the numbers together, the 40,000 plus not hiring back the fifth DPW plus pushing off a second full-time police officer, we're looking at about the equivalent of 2 to 2.5 furloughed employees in the savings between those kind of three partial position, or the wage increase plus the two partial positions.
So give me an idea on the sales tax receipt. How
Mhm.
much did we get in April when it was way down? I mean, how much
Well,
are we looking at losing in May? If it is 75% or 50%, how much are we
So we-
losing?
So we budgeted $395,000 in sales tax revenue for the full 2019-2020 budget year. After receiving the April check, which was our 11th check of the year,
Right.
we're at 400,000. So we've already made our 2019-2020 number.
Does that mean we get one more check?
We get one more check, which would be for the month of April, which I'm expecting to be very low.
It won't be good.
Right.
I would expect the month of May to also be very low. That'll be received in June.
And that
How-
check may, oh, I'm sorry, Roden. That check may not come in this budget year.
Yeah, we've mentioned that. The May sales tax is received in June. April sales tax will be received this month. And we expect April sales tax to be negligible. So we've made our number for this year. Next year is the question mark. How quickly does sales tax pick back up if, fortunately, we're in the first group to reopen? So if we get to phase 4, let's say, if phase 3 is restaurants mid-June, how quickly does that pick back up? That's the giant unknown.
One question on the side there, is this primarily about sales tax, or is there a concern or an eye towards cash flow around collection of property tax as well? Or is that part of this problem and question?
Everything's part of the problem. It's certainly
Yeah.
part of the calculus. So I had Tammy, I asked Tammy to pull, and thanks for reminding me, I'd forgotten about that. I asked Tammy to pull the, of all the property tax bills issued, what portion of them are paid from a bank, which means that there's an escrow in place, versus what portion are self-pay. It's 1/3, almost exactly. Interestingly enough, it's 1/3 escrow paid, 2/3 self-pay. I was really hoping those numbers would be reversed, but they're not. So I think that there could be, and we won't know until July, but there could very well be a property tax cash flow issue. Yeah.
Do we know when, you know, after by July, 50% of people have typically paid, by August, 75%, that kind of understanding, like how long, what am I trying to get at? How soon will we know if things are kind of out of whack? If that mean, you know, people are not paying right kind of regularly. I guess I don't really know how much people pay kind of, you know, they get their bill and they pay it the next day, typically in a normal year, you know?
I would say, I mean, a third right off the top are escrow. So obviously they're paid within the first 30 days. I would say by 4th of July, we are probably at least 3/4 paid, at least. By the time we send out the first late notice, which goes out September 1st, we generally have maybe 20 bills outstanding out of the 800 and whatever. So so by the first week of July, we'll have a really good idea of where we are.
And it'll be a really interesting, purely, you know, for economics types, it'll be very interesting because one thing that we had this conversation, I think you might have been on the call, Ben, we had this conversation with Jason Molino about encouraging the governor to waive the interest and penalties on property taxes. And Jason's comment was interesting that the same people every single year end up getting re-levied. And so there's actually a tax return write-off for some of these folks by incurring the additional cost from the penalties and interest. So they just let it go every year anyway. So this will be a real test to see, you know, kind of where we stand on that come 4th of July week.
So I just ran April, May, June, July off of the sales tax, just guessing 25% and then 50% for each month, and based on 11 months into 395. And I came up that we would be short about 62,900, about 63,000. So that's how much, and that's just guessing that it's only 50% for those months. I don't know what that means, though.
So that's about right. I had calculated anticipating if we're down 15% year over year next year, based on where we should have ended this year, because we've got this weird, because of where our fiscal year falls, we've got this kind of, we're splitting the crisis between 2 budget years.
Right.
But I had figured somewhere between 47 and 52,000 as the shortfall next year.
42, 52, yeah. Yes, if I took
So
April,
somewhere-
if I took April and May out, that's probably right where I came to. So I think we're hitting the same numbers. So,
Yeah.
so
I'll So
I have
I'll
another
throw this-
question.
Oh,
How
go
mu-
ahead,
I'm,
Deb.
s- I'm sorry. How much unencumbered balance did we have this fiscal year, or the one that we're in?
The one that we're in, we won't know until the audit is done.
But
We know what our
we gotta,
unencumbered balance number was at the end of last May.
we gotta be close though. That's too bad. I'm just trying to figure out,
Is your question roughly how
Give me a
under
second, I'll
budget
grab
we
it.
are?
yeah, how under budget are we?
Vicky, you're muted.
You're still muted, Nick.
If you give me
There you
just
go.
a few seconds, I'll look and see where we are.
Thank you.
So just a quick side, when do we usually put money into reserves? Is there like a,
Budget.
right, I know, but when does it actually move from one account into the other?
I usually do it in July after tax payments are done.
Can we delay those payments so that we can adjust those numbers in our budget once we have better information?
I assume I can talk to Dwayne about that, but I would think as
I
long
think
as they were done within the budget year, but I can check with him and get back to you.
I mean, it just.
Thought you could do a budget amendment anytime.
Right, but then you would have to take the money out of reserve, which would be just kind of a mess. If we could delay putting it in, then that would give us some flexibility as far as, sort of last minute adjustments, basically. As information is coming in, we could make more informed decisions.
Right.
Do we get to do that? Like if the budget says we're putting this X dollars in,
I mean, we can make budget amendments. It's
Right.
not good practice, certainly, but I feel like this is exactly the time.
Yes.
Yeah, I already
So
asked
let's-
Dwayne that question. I already asked Dwayne that question last month, and the answer is yes. You can change the appropriation to reserves with board approval. And it would be a budget modification. Then instead of appropriating those funds to reserves, you're appropriating them back to fund balance.
So, okay, Vicky, do you
Yep.
come close?
Right now, the budget is under budget, $428,707. I'll have a much better number at the end of the week when I get April's done. But that's where it is as of March 31st.
Yeah, that's not what Deb's asking.
That's not under
Oh.
It's
budget,
not
that's
budget,
under,
that's unspent.
Right, well,
right. Right.
So I've been
Yes,
looking
I-
at it. We're running single digits, Deb. Single digits under budget. I'm hoping to
Okay.
sneak that. I'm hoping to sneak that towards 10% by not approving any spending. Easier said than done. When you need a new wellhead, you have to pay for it. But
420,
uh,
yeah.
if we
Wait,
can
I
be
want
close-
to change my vote on that.
42, say.
I didn't have all the information present.
I
So
mean, I
here's-
might
ahead.
being overly cautious, but I do feel like I'm really tempted by the idea of really holding off on increases and putting money in reserve, trying to just keep everything as is and stable for the next couple of months and reevaluate come July or maybe August with a real hope towards we're feeling much more secure and we can kind of go back to closer to the plan of record. But it buys us a lot of flexibility over the next couple of months while things continue to settle. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
I like the idea of not putting things into reserve and leaving them where they are. And by the time we get to knowing how much is left over from this budget, taking whatever that is and continuing to use that to do the offset that we may need on the sales tax side.
One option, if we want to do that, is whether reserve or raises, either one, we could determine to freeze it for the first quarter of our fiscal year, so June, July, and August. And that would mean that by the August meeting, we would need to be looking at our sales tax revenues for the first couple of months of the new fiscal year. We would hold off on the reserves, so Vicky would not move contributions to reserves at all in July. We would hold that. And then we could determine in our September, we could determine in our August meeting whether effective September, the start of Q2, what we want to allocate to reserves, bearing in mind we don't want to mess up our replacement cycles too much, and whether to initiate the 3% wage increase or some other number. I don't want to let that drag on too much, but I think that that could be a compromise. You could either, I think 2 months is not long enough to get good sales tax numbers, or see what the property tax receipts look like. You know, property tax receipts are pretty much per normal, which interestingly enough, they were, if memory serves, back in 2008 and 2009. Property taxes were not far off in terms of timeline. So if by the end of July we're where we were in terms of receipts that we were last July, and think we're seeing a sales tax rebound, then it should be easy enough at our August meeting to approve the wage increase for September and the reserve allocations.
I'm in favor of that approach.
That
I
sounds
think
good.
I think that's a reasonable approach as well. I mean, looking at a $62,000 shortfall, just knowing that it'll probably be around that. At least we have a game plan, and we don't have to furlough anyone, and we're in a better position to at least look September for those raises. When is the election?
September, Deb.
Actually, it is worth
We
pointing
think.
out that we should all thank Deb for retiring twice and returning both times. I think that's worth pointing out.
Oh my gosh.
I got my committee to fill vacancy on speed dial right now. This is like a call from the governor before midnight. My question would be, would we ever consider, I know some companies right now are doing pay cuts, but calling them essentially a deferment, so that when things rebound, they basically fill in what it initially was cut. Would we ever consider that, or is it too hard to know? Or would it be too much to predict to basically retro pay those raises?
I think I'm going to propose that to my business. Could you give me my money back?
I think it's doable, Keith.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's going to probably, a lot of that depends on, I imagine a huge part of the sales tax numbers, that sales tax we receive, will have a lot to do with whether we have kids on college campuses in September.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. The other thing too that isn't talked about much is the governor has made very clear that if we don't get federal assistance, that we're looking at a 20% cut to local aid. So we can basically, our aim is only about 12,000, but CHIPS is not. CHIPS is big.
CHIPS is
So
it.
if you
And
were
I was
to-
thinking about that. I actually, CHIPS is one of those things that I had in the back of my mind. I know that we've done the 10 miles in the village in the last 10 years. I know that we're in a good place with almost all of our roads. We should forget about paving this year, and this discussion you can have with Dusty. Forget about paving altogether and go to stone and oil in a couple of places, thereby eliminating the need for chips, at least until we see if it comes in or not.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So that we're not cutting off our nose, basically, just if we don't get it. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, there's no way this crisis gets used to push consolidation, right? That's not,
Who
that
would-
wouldn't happen, right?
Who would dream of such a thing? So I'm just thinking for a moment whether we need a resolution now to make those changes.
I just want to speak to what Keith was saying about the recovery of lost wages in the 3 months or however long till the September, when things recur. I actually don't think that's a good idea to carry it on the books like that. And because at the end of it, if you finally do pay them, it's more like a bonus payment. I have no idea what municipal law says about bonus payments or deferred payments. And it seems like I think it's false hope. just putting it out there.
No, I mean, I agree. It's not, you know, I know when you do things like that, you don't want to promise them, but I just didn't know if it would be a consideration if we, you know, if we have a faster recovery than we expect, if things really get opened up in July and tourism is great and kids come back and we're flush, would we consider it? And I don't know how hard that is. So just throwing everything at the wall right now.
So what's the feeling and consensus of the board? Are we looking at holding off on raises and reserve for Q1, just reserves for Q1? How do we want to approach this?
I'd say both.
One for both. Keith, Ben, Deb.
So how much, so that 40,000 savings was for the year, right?
Correct.
Right.
So,
Well, in my mind, the holding off is to buy flexibility. It's not to buy the complete amount.
yeah, I guess trying to do the numbers.
So that's $10,000 a quarter.
Right.
For raises, and I would be for I would prefer reserve only.
I think I agree with Deb. I just can't see my way, like the budgetary impact is so slow, or so small, but the psychological and personal impact for our employees is huge. I see no reason that we couldn't come August or September take the same action then. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more difficult, but it's still possible. And given that it looks like our shortfall is, you know, certainly under 100,000, it seems like just not backfilling our positions gets us to where we're projecting will be. And then the delaying reserves allows us the flexibility to deal with it if the crisis is worse than we expect.
Can I ask Tammy a question in the middle of this, please? Tammy, is there any laws that would prevent us from decreasing? If we have granted at this point 3% raise and we reevaluate in September that we do not have the sales tax or revenue to support that and needed to decrease everyone back to the 3%, is there any municipal law that would prevent us from doing that?
I don't know if there's a municipal law, but it seems like there'd be a Department of Labor issue in there. I mean, I am not the Department of Labor expertise, but I think cutting somebody's wages after the fact gets sticky. I'm not real sure.
No, I asked Dwayne that too, and that's why we have collective bargaining units. So outside of collective bargaining, you can cut wages in the public sector, just like you can in the private sector. You
Okay.
can furlough, you can lay off, you can't fire necessarily because of civil service law. So that's where we end up
Right.
with furloughs and layoffs.
All right, I just wanted to make sure before we went down this
Yeah,
path.
that was
that
my
that-
question. I'm glad you asked that because I was wondering the same thing.
I was
Can
gonna
I-
say I actually kind of think I mean, at least I don't know. My opinion is that it sounds like the opposite would be less. Wow, I'm stumbling over my words. I feel like it's a lot worse to have to revoke a pay increase after the fact, just psychologically, than it is to hold off for on the short term with the hope that maybe it comes back, or if it doesn't, you're not losing anything. Risk aversion's a real thing. Loss aversion's a real thing. And I think it might be an easier way to go that route, to be honest.
Well, if we're really transparent about it, and we say what we're trying to forecast here and how we're going to reevaluate the beginning of Q2, I mean, you could say it's 3 months of being able to put that 3% in your savings and getting a chance to brace for a potential cut rather than just not. I mean, if this started next month, that's you might be budgeting for your 3% raise and all of a sudden it's not going to come. So I don't know if that quarter offers a chance to potentially prepare.
Tammy's asking in.
Do you mind if I chime in for just a second? So I know I can only speak for me. And first of all, I think probably I can say for myself and for the ladies that I work with that we're all very aware of what the current conditions are and how fortunate we are to still have our jobs and to be able to do them remotely and to have the support to do that. So if it means holding off on raises, I think then that's okay. I personally wouldn't want you to give it and then take it away. I think it's easier going forward to know where we are right now, right today, as much as any of us can right now. And I don't think that you would, I mean, there'll always be one or two of us will be disgruntled about something, but guys, I think you have to do what you have to do. And I, for one, wouldn't want to be in your position. And again, grateful that we're here. So if that 3% has to wait, I would just as soon it wait than for you to go ahead and for all of us to jump in and change everything that we have to change, because it's a lot on June 1 for you to say in September, maybe we jumped too quick. So that's just my 2 cents coming at this. I've gone through the wage freeze before. We all came out of it okay. It never feels good, but it's going to feel better now than it's going to in September when we've all gotten used to the incremental raise in our direct deposits. That's it. That's all I had to say about it.
I mean, I am persuaded by that. It is harder to, I mean, as Ben says, it's harder to lose than to remain at status quo.
Again, I can't speak for
Okay,
anybody.
she sold me too, Gordon. So it's raise and reserve.
And if anybody asks,
That was not my goal.
anybody asks, Tammy delivered the hammer.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Tammy, for speaking to it.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to be. I mean, it's not an easy decision one way or the other, but I mean, I'm happy to go with that. I'm just, you just trying to think of every scenario on everyone's behalf. So, but if I can be behind that.
Ben Carver, last comments?
Thank you for convincing me I was wrong. Appreciate it.
That wasn't my goal.
Well, it was effective. I think it's the right decision. I think that feels better having thought about it for a second. Yeah.
Thank you.
So then I would entertain a motion then. We'll leave the reserve handling out of the motion. But for the purpose of wages, I would entertain a motion to freeze non-collective bargaining wages at their 2019-2020 levels for at least the first quarter of the 2020-2021 budget year.
I'll make that motion as a new convert.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All right, then hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, well, we won't let that linger. We'll keep an eye on what June and July look like. Next item under my mayor's report is we have in the Dropbox for your perusal and comment. There's no action that needs to be taken tonight. If you want to comment now, that's great. If you want to comment later this week, that's also fine. Starting with DPW, there is an item titled, probably use the text file, 7.g DPW COVID-19 protocols. A week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, I asked Dusty and Tammy to submit to me plans for their desired reopening protocols with some suggestion from me, but kind of wanted to get their sense of how they would run things. For DPW, they've been working on revolving shifts and half days. Starting this week, they are on full days with 2 on. So John Lanning is water only per the health department's request. And then Dusty is every day as the supervisor. And one of the other 2 is coming in every other day. His plan is that he submitted to me is that as of next week, we would have John remain on water. Dusty and the other 2 would be coming in. And that they would use proper physical distancing between each other as well as between them and the public. The use of PPE, which they've been supplied with from our EMS department as needed, and that Dusty would essentially create a job structure for them. So they would be mowing on their own, they would be weed eating on their own. It'll either be lonely or pleasant, depending on how you like doing things like that by yourself. And that'll be basically how they will move forward for at least the first part of the summer. Theirs is fairly straightforward. Again, jump in and comment if you want, or let me know if you see any issues between now and the end of the week. The 7.g in the Dropbox, 7.g reopening Village Hall plan. I asked Tammy to put this together, and she and I had discussed previously coming off of remote work. I actually have it in mind to reimagine somewhat how the front office works.
You don't have much else to think about, do you, Aaron?
No, not at all. And primarily around the fact that we now know work can be done remotely. Still wanting to limit contact with members of the public. And also keeping in mind this idea of if 3 people are in the same room for 40 hours a week and one of them gets sick, it's much more likely that everyone's going to get sick. So some combination of a revolving staffing in addition to physical distancing, PPE when in contact with the public, et cetera. So Tammy's developed this. I've reviewed it, The only thing that's missing, and she mentioned it, the only thing that's missing is I do want some type of a plexiglass window installed in that front window for folks when they come in. But the basic outline is that the village office would go to 4 days a week. Fridays closed. Those 4 days would be 9-hour days, 8 to 5 instead of 8 to 4. And there would only be 2 people in the office on any given day. So there would be no instance of, if I'm reading this right, correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, there would be no instance where all 3 people would be in the office at the same time.
That's
However,
correct. There would be a maximum of 2.
however, everyone would be in the office with the third person, so to speak, at least a couple days a
Once.
week, so that appropriate overlap and cross work can be accomplished. The third person, when working remotely, would still need to, they're working, so they would need to make sure we would need to make sure they have access to whatever materials they have. And you can certainly read through and kind of peruse this document, as well as in-house directives. There would be no other employees allowed in the main office anymore, with the exception, it's not this strict in the document. I'm suggesting that with the exception of department heads or an employee who needs something specific. So if there's a delivery to the main office for the EMS department and whoever's on shift needs to come pick it up, that's one thing. But we're no longer going to be able to allow congregation in the main office during downtime. So in reality, this is how this is structured is up to me and Tammy, but I want to get input. If anyone has suggestions, if you see, kind of stress tested in your mind, if you want to think of it that way, or there things that were missing by not having the office open that 5th day? Are there things that we're missing by not having all 3 in the office on any given day? Kind of think through those protocols. Now, we will also get the county's ROOP, organizational plan, and I'll certainly take a look at it and cross-reference it for similarities and differences. But it'll come as no surprise to any of you that I like to do things our way from time to time. So I think we can develop what we think will work best for our residents and for the front office staff.
I'll throw one thing out there. I wonder a little bit if this is actually like a worst of all worlds. Like it kind of doesn't have everyone in the office and reopen fully, which would bring its own benefits, obviously with its own risks. And it doesn't seem like it really separates people fully enough to truly prevent kind of infection from other people. If that's really the case, I put a big asterisk because we're at such low risk now at this point with numbers and whatnot in the area that I think we have some flexibility. But if just purely looking at trying to reduce the risk, the fact that there's this constant overlap between people on different days kind of makes it feel like I wonder if we're taking on most of the risk without getting a lot of the reward, I guess is the other way to put it.
That would be my inclination as well, that rather than having everyone overlap so that, Tammy is exposed to both Vicky and Morgan in any given week, and likewise, they're each exposed to everyone else. That basically ensures that if one is sick, all 3 become sick rather than isolating individually. So to me, this is sort of a step 2, whereas step 1 would be 1 person in the office at a time and then rotate the 4th day or something along those lines. But like Ben says, I feel like it's sort of, if y'all are confident and comfortable, the big question is implementation. And in both DPW and office and family and personal and whatever setting you like, the question is, can it be can you implement it strictly into the letter of the law, for lack of a better word?
I think if there's only
Yeah, I mean-
one in there, you don't have, you've got no coverage if somebody's sick or if somebody has to run an errand or if, and the expectation will be that the office is open. So it doesn't give them the flexibility to actually go to the bank or even whatever.
Or be on the, yeah, I mean, or be on the
be on
phone
the
and have
phone.
window. And when I was kind of putting it together last week, I had thought about that too. The cross, just us crossing so many times a week, perhaps. But I think this does open us up, Ben. I think this puts us in full open mode. I don't know what the downfall, or if there would be one, if we did, weeks at a time as opposed to doing this kind of overlapping thing. But if we were to do that, that means there would be periods of time where I'm not going to perhaps be with or see, let's say, Vicky for 2 to 3 weeks. And I don't know how we can run efficiently that way. And so that's why I kind of did the scheduling the way I did it. But I also understand your concerns because they are my concerns as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not opposed. I just wanted to kind of I almost feel like my argument is the other way around, that I don't know as if this is so significantly safer than just all three people being in the office, that if that were more interesting to people, maybe, I guess I don't know as if it makes it significantly safer. I guess there is some amount, but not a ton in my mind.
I'd like to also point out that effective June, what was it? June 5th. She's gonna be gone for a while anyway. So even if you had 2 people, you're not gonna have 3.
Good point.
Yeah, Vicky, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to ask when you planned on implementing this. Is it going to be next week, or are you waiting till after the June 6th date? And my concern is I actually have to have a COVID test 3 days before my surgery. And if you're going to start it next week, I would almost request that I could still work remotely until I come back, with just, not that I think Morgan and Tammy are going to bring anything into the office, but
Just be safe.
yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're all at.
Right.
I mean, I don't think none of us want to be sick.
Right.
No.
But I didn't know whether he was going to, if it was after the May 15th or he was going with the June 6th date.
What June 6th date are you referring to?
I thought whatever the governor, didn't the governor extend everything till June?
No.
6th? What's that? Oh, okay. Well, then I'm confused.
That's Facebook stuff.
That's
No.
Could be another state too.
no.
No, there was a statement. Melissa DeRosa had to release a statement over the weekend. Basically, he extended the underlying authority to issue emergency orders
Right.
through June 6th. He did not extend the pause through June 6th.
Oh, I thought that's what it said.
New York pause officially ends Friday. My intention is for the village office to reopen next week, unless I hear something different from county health department on Thursday. So if they push me back a week, we'll do that. But what the reopened office? I'm sorry.
You said next week?
Correct. A week from today, my intention is to have the village office at least partially reopened, depending on what I hear from the health department on Thursday.
Okay.
And also depending on what their reopening protocols look like to reopen departments. I think between water bills and property tax next month, I don't want to keep it closed too much longer, but I want to have a clearly defined, well thought out protocol in place, which is why I had Tammy develop that document. Any other board comments?
I was just wondering, I mean, if I want to be conscientious of Vicky and your desire not to jeopardize your surgery. If it is a concern of yours to be in the office over the next couple of weeks up until that surgery, maybe that leads an option where it's just Morgan and Tammy, in the office and Vicky remote, and that would take us through the next 2 months anyhow due to your surgery. And then it's a very different conversation when we get to that point, but that could be another kind of approach just based on the situation we're in.
And I'm good with that, but that, Vicky, that means that we're gonna have to do the checks and stuff. You cannot come in.
Well, couldn't I come in after you're all gone?
No, you don't want to come in after we're all gone. You don't want to cross-contaminate where we've been.
Well, I
Not,
was thinking
for
two
your
of us in
surgery.
there together. That's what I was thinking. Just being in there with the public and with someone else. And if I came in when nobody was there, but I mean, it is what, I mean, whatever. I'll do
Could come in
whatever.
on a Sunday or something if that was.
right, but if Morgan and I have been there all week,
I would think by Sunday it's probably, I mean, I don't know. Now we're just
I mean,
guessing
I
at
don't
this
know
point, but
either.
right, and
No,
that's
I
how
think
I
we
feel.
can-
I think that's exactly how I feel. I think we're just all making a big fat guess.
We need to phase in the phase in.
How does the board feel about a Friday, not being open on Fridays in general?
As long as the
I mean-
hours get worked, I don't care.
yeah, I don't mind. And certainly, in the near term, kind of under the auspice of we're reacting to the situation we're in. I don't see a problem with that.
And I think that,
Can we
I
go-
mean, people adjust to it because I can tell you how many times I've gone to the town office and it's been closed.
Yeah, we've been closed at 1 o'clock for so long on Fridays. I don't think anybody will really notice.
All right, I will, make a decision by the end of the week and then communicate that to everyone, taking into account Vicky's surgery date. Maybe we'll even have shortened hours initially for the first week or two. We'll see. I'll talk to Tammy, Morgan, and Vicky about that more, but then I'll let everyone know after Thursday's health department call, get a sense of what direction they're leaning in.
If the weather's nice, keep the windows open,
If the weather's
Um,
nice.
Yeah, like when's
if it's not still snowing outside,
A couple of other items before we move on. One of the things that's come up, or an idea I had that's come out of this business survey, is if restaurants, we don't have to decide this tonight, but I'm throwing out the idea for consideration to think about it. If restaurants are in phase 3, and if everything stays to timeline, phase 3 would be mid-June. We have an outdoor seating permitting process, which includes a fee and the requirement for a sketch plan design of the seating area. It has not been widely used after the first year or two that it was available. I'm considering whether this board would want to, for this summer only, allow any outdoor seating. The only requirement being that the village be named as an additional insured, which is already part of the requirements, but that the fee be waived, the sketch plan design be waived, that we essentially throw the door wide open to any restaurant that has space. Now, if it's a sidewalk seating, you have to allow for the ADA required, I think 48 inches of space for people to pass by. They will almost certainly have their own sanitation and employees wearing masks. I'm sure they will have their own requirements from the health department, but in terms of allowing for, let's say the health department says phase 4 restaurants can reopen, but your seating capacity is cut in half. If they're able to seat outside kind of by right, whether that would be something that we could do to help them out kind of get their systems rebooted in this new environment.
I'm all for that. I mean, I like outdoor seating anyhow. I'd love to see more of it generally in the village. If this jump starts that, even all the better, but I think it makes a lot of sense in the current atmosphere. Again, being outside, it's going to get the fresh air, sunshine. Hopefully it's a little cleaner and easier.
Why isn't it more utilized? Businesses don't want to pay, or the go through the time of the planning, the sketch plan.
Yeah, it's more the, so there was a lot of concern initially when we first visited this about people sitting outside at all hours. So we made it fairly restrictive, and it was really designed for restaurant seating. And it went well, with kind of one notable exception, but it was mainly the sketch plan design, getting it reviewed by code enforcement to make sure it complied, pulling the chairs and tables inside every night. So there was a fair bit of structure to it, which I think is a good thing. But I almost, seeing the survey responses as I have, I'm almost tempted to just throw the doors wide open when restaurants are allowed to open, and just, let people physically distance, but let them get out, let them give these Trumansburg businesses a chance, because we need, and I don't want to be overly pessimistic. We need summer to stretch into November, and we need a lot of sunshine and a lot of nice days, and a lot of outdoor seating for our restaurants to have a chance.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So would that just wipe out the application process, Gordon?
No, we can revise the application process so we know who has the outdoor seating. We do need to have them name the village as an additional insured if they're using sidewalk space. If they're in their own parking lot, then that's probably not a requirement. So there would have to be some type of we can work with the chamber on that as well. But I think by removing the fee, and it's not a large fee, but by removing the fee and the requirement that they basically come up with a sketch plan of how the seating is going to look, I think that removes a couple of barriers to trying it. And I have actually suggested to the health department already that if they're going to limit restaurant seating capacity, that they take into account whether or not they have outdoor seating available. So, if a restaurant can seat 75 and the health department says initially you can't seat more than 30, then if they have outdoor seating, they would at least be able to expand on that somewhat. And they said they would look into it. So at least if we're prepared for it, I think we can advocate for it. All right. Property tax interest. I need the board to let me know what you think. So the governor has not made any determinations about delaying property tax interest. It is part of New York State real property tax law, how interest and penalties are levied. There is a provision that allows the chief executive of any municipality to petition the governor's office directly for a extension of the deadlines. The deadline cannot be extended by more than 21 days. So 3 weeks, thank you very much. My question is, do you want me, because I think 3 weeks is not a very long time, but maybe it's the thought that counts. Do you want me to formally request of the governor that our property tax receipt deadline be moved from June 30th to July 20th?
Not worth the effort is what I would say. And if they don't have the money June 30th, they're not going to have the money July 20th. either.
That was my thinking. That was where I was torn between the making the effort versus saying it doesn't really matter anyway. So, Keith, Ben, or Ben?
Because I'm wondering, would the state see that as doing us a favor? And if they do, I don't want them to be the favor they do us.
Hmm.
I'm guessing they see everything as a favor these days. So
Yeah. Yeah. NICOM is suggesting that we make the request. I tend to suddenly take with a grain of salt what I'm thinking anytime NICOM agrees with me. So there's that.
What is it to formally petition? Is it just kind of write a letter and send it off, or is there more pomp and circumstance?
It's an email. It's the email to the Assistant General Counsel of the governor.
Somehow I always feel like when you give, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, but that's not how I feel about it. I feel like if you give them, you may get them in more trouble by giving them 3 more weeks than to have them worry about it and take 3 weeks to pay for it. I don't know.
I mean,
yeah,
if it's just an email, I feel like I don't expect it to even be read, to be honest, but I do feel like the thought that counts if it's just an email.
yeah. I mean, if it's that minute, I mean, it's just, I guess it's every little bit helps. But yeah, if it's just like a formality and they'll allow you to do it, I have no sense of whether it's something they don't like you to do, and I don't know.
I can't even remember what the first percentage of interest, what it is for that first 21 days. Isn't it like 1 or 2%?
I think it's 2.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually, I take back what I said earlier, it doesn't change the receipt deadline. It only extends, so people who pay, the bill is still due on June 30th. But if they don't pay until July 3rd, then technically they would receive an interest charge. In this case, they wouldn't if the governor were to approve it, which who knows if he would or not. If he does go statewide, then that's different. He can establish new deadlines altogether. But I haven't seen any indication that he wants to do that at this point.
I find it difficult that if I was due June 30th and I delivered it June 30th, that they'd even get to process it before July 3rd.
Well, we wouldn't, but we would stamp it on the date received and the postmark date. So those are the dates that we use when posting the payments.
Okay.
I would say do it. I mean, my only reservation would be that we just set up a number of decisions to be made at the end of the first quarter. But I think, yeah, like Keith said.
Go ahead and request it. It can't hurt, but I just don't think it helps either.
Well, I think it's good that everyone will still get the original deadline.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
It's where the deadline's not different. It's not gonna be a month later that they get their bill. It's just gonna be the wave of interest if you can't pay it.
The one thought for me is, I know any one person, it's kind of like a vote, right? Any one vote doesn't really matter, but if everyone thinks of it that way, then the whole thing is called into question. If we're, probably our one email doesn't make a difference, but if everyone emails, then I think that does make a difference. And if everyone feels like they shouldn't email, then that defeats the whole purpose. So I like the idea of trying to email, and maybe that will somehow push the universe to have more people email, and then maybe something goes somewhere. Who knows?
Okay. Last item I have on my laundry list here is, as you are all well aware, the rest of the school year in-person classes has been canceled for the rest of the school year. There's a strong desire among many to do something, anything, everything for the members of the senior class of 2020. I've been asked to sit on a panel with members of the community in the school in terms of trying to plan something of some type for graduation. But the other thing that's come up is the senior class is purchasing banners. So they're 2 foot wide by 3 foot tall vertical banners, which will have, I believe, every high school senior's name on it, or at least each one will have a senior's name on it. So there'll be 70 banners for 70 high school seniors. I have offered, unless you all want to veto me, I have offered the use of our Main Street downtown lamp posts, the wrought iron black lamp posts, as a place to mount those banners. And I met today with a distributor who supplies it. Dusty took a look at it. It'll work. There'll be a little bit of effort to put them up, but that hopefully by the end of the month we can have some acknowledgement of these graduating seniors throughout kind of the downtown district. I think it'll look nice. The payment for it is going to be done entirely through the senior class and through fundraising. The school has actually offered to pick up any shortfall if there's not enough money. So there's no village taxpayer expense other than DPW time. When all of the banners and brackets come in, they'll be busy mounting them on 35 of our lampposts. So just wanted to make the board aware of that, unless
So-
there's any strenuous objection. Yeah, that
They actually did this for Minders Academy in Seneca Falls. I was there Saturday. I was driving Seneca Falls, and all of their lampposts have seniors on them. It's really, it was very, very nice. And in fact, I was going to come back and suggest something like that. It's good to hear. I think that I didn't think we'd have enough lampposts.
we have 40,
And there are 70 seniors.
and there are 2 banners per pole. So we have 40. We need 35. So we
Okay.
just made it. I guess fortunate that
They are very nice.
Yeah.
It's like,
good. Okay, so that's it for me. Item number 8 is old business. We have an update on the NIPA LED streetlight purchase program.
Yeah, really quick update. I had a call, I think 2 weeks ago, conference call, and getting closer to each municipality getting their design presentation. So we're supposed to hear more about that. And I think that we now have reoccurring meetings on the books. The main kind of item of action for us is to go ahead with assuming we're want to continue with this project. Seems like we do. The next step would be to actually purchase the lights from NYSEG, and I'm hearing that turnaround time is predictably not fast. NYSEG is looking for different ways to not have people do this. My main question for them on the conference call was, our fear of being caught in limbo where we make the purchase and then we have to wait until they're ready to move forward. And how they remedy that is essentially they give us the money to make the purchase. That's built into the program, and we would then enter into a maintenance agreement with them at the same time. So there's more details to it, but the bottom line is we can make the NYSEG purchase without us actually fronting the money. And so that was the recommended next step for us. And, we have the purchase offer from NYSEG. It would be a matter of signing that and moving forward. And I don't know if we, I'm not exactly sure how we go about approving that. If it's just we give Roran authorization to sign that if we want to sign it. Or if we want to.
What's your expected timeline on that?
On how long it would take for us to get ownership?
No, and how long it would take before we need to determine who signs or who authorizes the
Oh, I
sign?
don't. They didn't really give us a deadline. I mean, everything that's happening right now has certainly pushed this project behind schedule of what they were looking to do. They basically just keep saying that, you know, the sooner you have all your ducks in a row, better chance you're one of the priority municipalities once we have the green light. If it has to wait until our next board meeting, I don't think that's the end of the world. But
Do we have that paperwork or whatever from NYSEG yet?
we have the purchase offer, yeah, and we got it a while ago, but it's good for 18 months. So I can dig that back out. If memory serves, it was the cost to purchase them. I want to say it was just shy of 20K or something like that. That's the number in my head, but maybe I'm way off there. Maybe that's cost savings. I'll have to double check.
Why don't you dig that paperwork back out, forward it along to me.
Okay.
We'll take a look at it again. And see about potentially signing it next month.
Okay. Yeah, everything else they have from Trumansburg what they need. So that was the next recommended step for us. So I will get the agreement out, send it around to everybody again.
Okay.
So I just pulled up the last email that we got, Keith, and it looks like it's 16,916.85.
Okay, so I was in the ballpark. Yeah, that sounds right. And I'll check back. I think I have a call coming up with NIPA, so I'll check back in with them and just see, they're not just going to send us a briefcase of cash, so we'll have to make sure we're in a line, have what they need from us in terms of making that transaction. But they have said that it has not been a fast turnaround of NYSEG either. So the sooner we get the ball rolling, the better. But again, I don't anticipate, if they are able to start replacing bulbs in the fall, I'd be surprised at this point. It just doesn't seem like it's probably a priority item for phasing back into life, but I could be wrong on that too.
Okay. Do we have any items of new business? If not, then
Actually, sorry, can I jump in quick? Just one small thing that I noticed the other day is that the Children's Village is closed. And if we're all in agreement, I would like to move away from the police tape murder scene vibe and into a sort of quarantined, protected area. If everyone's on board, every time I walk past it now, I can't look away, and it's very grim. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If everyone's on board, changing that.
It matches the playground at the school so well. I don't know.
Oh, it's too much. It's too much.
What if we add some chalk outlines with that?
Yeah, that would really do it. Yeah.
How do you want to keep it barricaded then?
Anything simple. It would be easy enough to put posts in at the entrances and just put across, or just post signs, I think would be adequate.
Okay. I'll talk to Dusty about it, see what he can
Thank you. You
If
will
you-
increase the
if you can go
quality of
with,
your day.
If you can go with crayon on cardboard that says "stay out," that'll be a
Yeah, yeah. Skull and
equally
crossbones.
creepy, but different.
Yeah.
Different. vibe.
Written with your left hand only.
All right. Bills. We have a general fund abstract totaling $155,008.86.
This is my time that I sign out. Good job.
Have a
that's
good
the
night,
best
Nancy.
part.
And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Nancy.
I'm just gonna stay, see what happens.
There you go.
Good. So I move that we approve that general fund abstract.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Baby's crying in the other room. Does that count?
Second.
Any questions, comments? Okay, then all in favor of paying the general fund abstract in that amount, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have our EMS billing abstract in the amount of $19,958.28.
I move that we pay this abstract.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second from Ben Darfler. And any questions, comments?
Oh, the baby.
Hearing none. All in favor of paying the EMS billing abstract, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Water fund, $30,610.74.
I move we
Moved.
pay the water fund abstract or sewer fund. Was it sewer water? See, that's why I said
Water.
water. I just heard.
Water, and I'll second.
Was it good water?
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Now, Keith, the sewer fund abstract, the amount of $22,855.35.
I'll move that we pay the sewer fund abstract.
And I'll second it.
I was scrolling too fast before. That's what happened.
Any questions, comments? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Capital project, Safe Routes to School, looks like a bond renewal fee in the amount of $1,250.
Move that we pay $1,250 from the Capital Bond Improvement Fund.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions?
That one just
If
keeps.
not, if not, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 And last but not least, trust and agency in the amount of $40,442.64.
I move that we pay that abstract.
A second.
Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Second public comment period, privilege of the floor. If Ann or Mark have anything they want to add? Nothing from Mark. I don't see Ann. I know she's still on the call.
I'm good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Ann.
Ann. No other members of the public present. Do we have need of an executive session?
Might not have
Wow.
need.
I think Ben
There's
is-
history.
I do. Sorry,
Feel
I
like-
was muted, so you couldn't hear
I
the
feel like we
noise. But I
need
do have an
one just to
executive
make
session.
sure we don't need one.
Damn it, Ben.
I
Damn
know,
it.
sorry.
I
My
was going to say
apologies.
that's the first time in almost 2 years.
Okay.
Didn't we have one 2
Please
months
screw
ago
up,
or 3
Carver.
months ago? For what it's worth, it's board only though, so you guys are in the clear.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss
An EMS personnel matter.
EMS personnel matter. Do we have a second?
So moved.
You're playing
Second.
executive session bingo.
Pretty sure that's all of the squares.
Womp womp.
All right, all in favor of going into executive session to discuss an EMS personnel issue, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Good
All
night.
right, good night, everybody. Good night,
Good
Mark.
night.
Good night.
Good
Somebody
night,
keep track of the
Tammy.
Mickey.
Bye, Morgan.
Good night,
Bye,
Morgan.
Mickey.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take
Yeah.
you, okay? Somebody's
second
gonna
here.
document when we're out, right?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, Tammy.
Everybody hold up
Morgan.
while I stop the recording and get us off YouTube.
That would be good.
The baby's staying, by the way. Sorry. She won't tell.